When WWE announced that they were doing a draft this year, I was absolutely filled with excitement. Triple H said it would change the foundation of the WWE, and I feel like the picks were reasonable. But at the end of the day, I feel like the WWE draft was a failure. And this is not me hating on WWE. Anybody who follows my content knows I'm not one of these tribalist dudes, right? I'm very open and honest about my opinions towards wrestling. I'm all about storylines, character progression, good matches, character development. I am definitely a lot more patient than other people. I don't mind waiting for things to play out. That's just my personal preference. But at the end of the day, I was watching the WWE draft this year, and I think the picks were fine. I think the roster is being split. I think everything is fine. I'm pretty okay with the outcome of the picks being made. But overall, the actual WWE draft, in my opinion, is a failure. And I've talked about this in the past, but I've never really elaborated, so this might take a little bit of time, but I'm actually going to be looking at my notes. I have quite a few things that I really want to discuss. But ultimately, what it comes down to with the WWE draft is that it simply doesn't make sense. That's how I feel. And I feel like WWE kind of gets away with it because pro wrestling doesn't typically have drafts, right? WWE for years and years and years has been the only one to actually implement a draft. But what it really comes down to is it doesn't make sense. So for example, there's no general managers on Raw or SmackDown. Everybody's going to be 50-50 on that, whether there should be authority figures or not. Little side note, I've always been under the belief that WWE should have authority figures, but they should not become overwhelmingly part of the storyline. They shouldn't be taking up too much screen time. The focus should be on, what's happening in the ring and the stories that are being played out. However, I do feel that authority figures are actually really good in the sense of justifying certain decisions for matches being made and booking and things like that. So, on Twitter, I had a post that went viral because I was saying, look, you can have Adam Pearce as one of the officials. You could have somebody else who is the equivalent to him. They both answer to Triple H, who is, the chief content officer, chief creative officer, whatever it is. And basically, a lot of people seem to agree with that. But what it really comes down to is who are the people actually making the picks for the draft? Now, if you have authority figures, it makes sense. And again, I'm not speaking of general managers like it was in the old days. I'm simply stating there needs to be people who are responsible for Raw and people who are responsible for SmackDown. Now, just a couple years ago, WWE did the War Rooms with USA and Fox executives, and I honestly thought that was really cool. But the WWE draft at that time is still not ideal for what I actually imagine. And obviously in this video, I'm going to be breaking it down. But who are the ones making the picks? In this draft, we don't really know. In fact, it kind of looked silly when you have Legends and Triple H and all these people just coming out here just announcing picks, right? This needs to emulate a WWE version of the NBA and NFL draft. And I know this is going to sound crazy, but if it's an episode of SmackDown or Raw, I actually would be very fine with limited matches or no matches at all if it meant that the draft was the sole focus of the show, meaning you would actually have, backstage promos and segments and reactions and stuff like that, which I'll get to in a minute. Why are there draft pools? This was a very big question in my head because WWE announced for night 1 and night 2 that there was a draft pool. Why was there a draft pool? Who determines who is in what pool? These are the questions that I have when WWE tells me, well, there's 30 superstars eligible today and there's 20 superstars eligible the next day, whatever. Again, I'm nitpicking, but this is because I just really want to see WWE take the WWE draft to the next level, and I really think this could be the thing that does it for them. Now, another thing that was really confusing to me in the WWE draft is free agency. Now, I get it. Brock Lesnar is a very big name. He's part-time. I wouldn't waste a draft pick on Brock Lesnar. In fact, I would also go as far as saying I wouldn't waste a draft pick on Trish Stratus, considering she's not expected to have a full-time run, for the entire year. Now, obviously that can change, but in my opinion, WWE has this whole free agency backwards. So if you guys look at real sports like the NFL and the MLB, NHL, and NBA, free agents are people who aren't signed to an agreement, and they don't have the ability to just go onto a random team without signing a contract, right? Now, if you convert that into WWE terms, WWE has free agents, but they're free to show up on whatever show they want to show up on. I don't think they understand what the term free agent means, and if that's what they're trying to do, I just think it's a very poor explanation. It's a very poor plan, and I would go as far as saying as maybe WWE didn't actually think that through. So guys like Brock Lesnar being a free agent is totally fine, right? In fact, what I would do if I was WWE is go on to say that legends are actually included in the WWE draft. Any legend who's on a TV, a Legends deal that can appear on TV can get drafted to either show. That does require WWE to carefully plan this a little bit more long term. But, if you're going to have Trish Stratus, if you're going to have, if you want Edge, for example, I know he's back and he's, currently on a run, but you can throw people that are probably not going to be here for a long time. You could put them as free agents, and then I guess you can say whatever. They can show up on, Raw or SmackDown. With that being said, with WWE, I think the real question here is, what exactly is the point of this? Omos, Mustafa Ali, Dolph Ziggler, Von Wagner, Zion Quinn. Those are just a few of the free agents that WWE decided. But without having authority figures or anybody to really clarify why this is happening, nobody understands why this is happening. So there is a lot of logic missing in this situation, and I think that's one of the things that really bothers me. Now, what would be one of the big ways that I would change the WWE draft to really increase the interest? I kind of spoke about it earlier, but I want to emulate the NBA draft and the NHL, NFL draft, So the way to do this for WWE, and I get maybe some people might not actually like this, but if I'm the WWE, I think you really got to get away from having matches on the show. And I know a lot of people will not be happy with that. But if you're watching the WWE draft, for example, you can give both authority figures 1 minute on the clock, 2 minutes on the clock, whatever it is, right? You could do 2 minutes on the clock. Then you can have them reveal their picks. You can show footage of wrestlers backstage with their reactions as they await being drafted. Just like how in the NBA and the NFL they have the green room, this is where the college athletes go and sit and they wait to be called up. WWE can do the same exact thing. Now, Rich Ucchino put a very interesting tweet about WWE, Triple H doing the finger point photo with draft picks. And look, if you look at the NBA and all these other sports leagues, when you get drafted, you get either you get the jersey or you get the hat, and you could take a photo with it with the commissioner. WWE, at the very least, can do something like that as well. But I really want to point out how you can fill up TV time for draft night. And I think a lot of that actually comes down to draft analysis. Right now, WWE's goal is to create stars. And this is an opportunity for WWE to put talent over in such a big way. Now, if I was the WWE, I would literally copy what NBA does on ESPN or NFL in the sense that they actually have wrestling analysts. Now, it could be their kickoff show panel. It could be an outsider like Ariel Helwani. It doesn't really matter who. Obviously, someone who's respected within pro wrestling or combat sports. But the idea for me would be mimicking those drafts in the sense there's, 2 or 3 minutes on the clock. You have reaction shots. You have wrestlers doing backstage promos as they're awaiting to be picked. And then what you can do is actually have analysts talk throughout the night and showcase footage of the wrestlers prior to being drafted. Now, for example, we'll just use Ariel Helwani as an example. This is just hypothetical. But imagine you have commentary on the show. Michael Cole and Corey Graves, whatever it may be. They're talking about WWE Draft. They're talking about, some of the best available roster members. Then you can have somebody like Ariel Helwani, who is a backstage correspondent, basically having his best available picks, in which he would basically give a rundown of who's been picked, who hasn't been picked, why Raw needs this type of superstar, why SmackDown needs this type of superstar. And I would even go as far as having them do something where throughout the show, you have these video packages that are being put on display. And then the reason why that exists is because when you're calling up talent or when you're drafting talent who may not be on TV very often, you can actually present them in a more positive way. So, for example, with this draft in WWE, this year, 2023, they drafted Odyssey Jones, and this was done on Raw Talk. Now, to be fair, Odyssey Jones, I have a lot of optimism for when it comes to him being successful in WWE. But his pick is quite surprising. And I think if you're the WWE and you were to do something like this, it would be really nice for people who don't know who he is to be able to get called up to the main roster with footage, with an explanation, maybe even a backstage reaction or some sort of thing, where WWE is putting on this presentation to make it look like Odyssey Jones is a very big surprise pick. He is somebody with tons of potential, and this was kind of like a wild card. Like, nobody really expected it. And then what you can do is whoever's the analyst, right? Hypothetically, Ariel Helwani, he can go and speak to whoever's making the picks for Raw or SmackDown and say, hey, Odyssey Jones, very interesting pick. We've seen a little bit of him in NXT. A lot of people, may not know who he is. What were the reasons why you picked him? Whoever that authority figure is can then kind of go on and to say, look, we chose Odyssey Jones because we're looking for the heavy hitters. We're looking for the big guys who are explosive. We're looking for the guys with charisma. We're looking for the guys who are going to help take this show to the next level. And, we're looking at future champions. We're looking at guys. There's a huge lineage with the Intercontinental Championship. And, our number one goal is to set up great matches. By WWE doing this, fans who may have never seen Odyssey Jones could be like, oh, he looks pretty legit. Now, again, what I'm saying is probably incredibly unrealistic. I don't imagine WWE ever doing this, but I just think this would be far more enjoyable. Now, I really do believe, like, if WWE is in a situation where they were to implement this, imagine the type of reaction certain people would get when they get called up to the main roster, creating that anticipation for their main roster debut. Maybe it's somebody like Mustafa Ali. He's a free agent, in 2023, according to the draft, he's a free agent. I would have some of these guys who don't get picked or guys who get picked later on in the draft. I would have them with Megan Morant or, Kathy Kelly, and I would have them cut a heel promo. Hey, what is this bullshit? I'm not being picked. Have they not seen the type of work I can do? And these types of things would help elevate talent so much more. And I just feel like the big focus would actually be on the future of WWE and not just draft night. I think it's really important that WWE does look to mimic sports as much as possible when it comes to the WWE draft, because I feel like when you offer that type of logic, when you're presenting people in a positive light, the overall response will be very good. Guys, I like Grayson Waller. I'm a huge Grayson Waller fan. The fact that he was picked, but it wasn't done on TV, what if those people don't watch NXT? What if they're not watching the picks being made on Peacock? I think that's a huge miss. But if you had Grayson Waller get picked and he's live from the Performance Center, that promo he just cut was incredible. You can put that live on television for his overall initial reaction. And I just feel like this could be a huge win for WWE. So ultimately, what does this really come down to? It comes down to creating the WWE draft in such a special way where people actually benefit from their draft picks. Austin Theory is the United States champion. Why did SmackDown want the U.S. champion and not Gunther? At the end of the day, Gunther is the one who's making history with the belt, with the IC title. Austin Theory, I mean, he's doing a great job, but he's not making history with the IC title. Imagine if you had somebody actually on TV say, look, we appreciated Gunther's contributions to SmackDown. He was a great champion. But at the end of the day, when we're looking at building the best possible show, we're looking at creating the big matchups that people want to see. And we feel like there's untapped potential with Austin Theory, and I just feel like it's WWE's job to present everybody in a positive light. But I just imagine if that extra logic was applied to the WWE draft, it would be absolutely massive. I also want to point out one really big thing, because obviously I mentioned all of this is hypothetical. But if you brought in somebody like Ariel Helwani and he has best available picks, and throughout the night, he's talking about people who haven't been drafted, why certain people were drafted higher, why certain people dropped in the draft. Maybe people are injured, right? We saw Indy Hartwell get called up, but we know she's injured. Like, Imagine if you have somebody there to help facilitate this like a real sport, and then actually use these moments to create feuds, create those big storylines. Odyssey Jones getting called up from NXT is a perfect example. He didn't really have that many matches in NXT. Imagine he gets called up, and then you have somebody like Mustafa Ali, who's been doing this positive Ali gimmick, right? And then he could come out and just start talking a whole bunch of shit. But at the end of the day, the idea can really transform the WWE product, because people are going to be like, oh, well, Mustafa Ali, he's pissed off. He didn't get drafted. He didn't get drafted before Odyssey Jones. Who's Odyssey Jones, And then I think at the end of the day, people not only get to see a little bit of a different side to Mustafa Ali, but then they also get to see Odyssey Jones as somebody who could be valuable, Again, I'm just using certain names as hypotheticals, but my point that I'm trying to make is that the WWE draft can be so much more than what it is. At the end of the day, I don't really disagree with the picks being made. 18 NXT superstars being called up is great, but at the same time, too, I really want these people to have a fair shot, because sometimes transitioning from NXT to the main roster, it's difficult. It really is difficult. And I'm not only speaking for NXT talent. There's guys who have been drafted and they haven't been on TV. What about Shanky? And again, I know some of you guys might not be fans of Shanky, but he's been part of the WWE roster. When Triple H took over, we didn't get an explanation as to where he is. Is he going back to NXT? Right? What about Indus Sher? Indus Sher got drafted with Jinder Mahal. Imagine if you're offering an explanation. Like Jinder went down to NXT with the goal of finding some people around him. He wasn't having a good run on SmackDown. He had a failed system with Shanky. Then he went to NXT. He brought Indus Sher to the main roster. Now, they're going to be on Raw. Jinder Mahal did the right thing. Maybe that's a reason for WWE Raw executives to want to draft Jinder, right? Again, it's all about offering explanations, highlighting people, and people who may have kind of faded away for a little bit. This kind of brings them back into feeling important. It's going to be crazy to see what happens, but I do think WWE could truly benefit from this. And of course, as always, I love to be open-minded with wrestling. I like to be optimistic, and I'm excited to see what the draft actually does for the WWE this year. But I just imagine it would be a hella fun show to watch, man. I feel like a lot of people would enjoy watching a WWE draft where the focus was actually on the people being drafted and why they're being drafted. And I feel like so many people would actually enjoy that, where WWE can be massive. And imagine you're the number one pick and you get the photo with Triple H. Imagine if you get the SmackDown t-shirt or a Raw t-shirt or a hat or something, and now WWE is really building the draft to something special. I get it. This might sound crazy to people, but I don't think it's actually unrealistic. I think if WWE wanted to do it, and I'm not saying they have to do it to a T, but I think if they really wanted to make the draft feel special, they can do better. And that's my point. With that being said, I appreciate everybody watching this video on more Ango. If you guys don't have the links to my channels, all my channels, links, all that stuff will be in the description down below. I've also built an awesome community on Discord, and if you guys are interested in joining that, feel free to join. It's completely free. It's very fun. I'll see you guys next time.